It was an election of firsts. Maxwell Frost, the youngest member of Congress, the first Afro-Cuban member of Congress, and the first member of Generation Z elected to Congress. And today, for the first time, he joins us for Central Florida Spotlight. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Central Florida Spotlight. We are joined today by Maxwell Frost. He is back home after being sworn in as a member of the 118th Congress, something that took a little bit of time. It was a little protracted, but yeah. Thank you for being here. And you heard in my intro all of those firsts, and I would imagine coming to Channel 9 is pretty low on the totem pole, but we're glad that you're here.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me, and you know, it's the honor of a lifetime to be able to represent my home of Central Florida.
What of those things are you most proud of by being the first Gen Z, first Afro-Cuban? You know, the list goes on and on. Is there one of those things that you go, yeah, that's super cool, that glass ceiling has been shattered?
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest thing for me is getting to represent District 10. You know, we are one of the most diverse districts in the country, and I was born and raised here in Central Florida, right? This is my home. My family's here, my friends are here, my schooling was here, and that's really the thing I carry with me the most. But it does mean a lot to be the first of a generation in Congress. It does mean a lot to be the youngest member in Congress. It does mean a lot to be the first Afro-Cuban there, and I think all this shows that every year we continued that tradition of excellence of having true representation in Congress. We're not where we need to be yet. I always say, you know, young folks in this country, younger millennials and Gen Z make up a third of this country. We're nowhere near a third of government, both local and federal, but every year we take steps forward in achieving better representation.
It took a while for you and the others to be sworn in. What was that like as you waited for each of those votes? It took 15 before the speaker was finally elected to the speakership.
Yeah, I got sworn in 2 a.m. on a Saturday, so that wasn't exactly what I was expecting, and it's unfortunate, you know. I think we already deal with problems of people not feeling that government works for them, and then they turn on the news and see that the House of Representatives can't even elect the Speaker of the House, and a lot of that was because of the dysfunction in the Republican majority right now. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see what we saw that first week again over the next 2 years, whether it has to do with bills or issues or now even the motion to vacate only being one member. The whole thing could happen again in picking another speaker. So, you know, for me, it's really important that we keep our eyes on the prize here and providing for people here in Central Florida. We're focused on our local efforts, our local office, and also the bills and work we'll do nationally as well. So it was different. I joke around that, you know, I voted for Hakeem Jeffries 15 times. I was waking up in the middle of the night going, Hakeem Jeffries, because we said it so many times, but it's a blessing to be in Congress in the first place, you know, and just ready to get to work and excited to be working right now.
One of the first things that you'll have to deal with is going to be the debt ceiling, yep. And that could be protracted as well. I mean, we could see a long battle with that. Where do you think that is going to end up?
We'll see. I mean, probably where it always ends up, where, you know, this is a huge problem. It's in the news. People are talking about it. It's talking points, and it always gets, you know, extended, right? It always gets risen, and that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, there's no other choice, right? We have spent money. This allows us to borrow more money to pay our bills. If we don't pay our bills, we're in a lot of trouble. And actually, the people who are going to be impacted the most if we don't get our act together on this are working class families, just like every other issue. And so for me, it's important that we kind of take out the politics of this and we get to work. Raising the debt ceiling is what's going to happen inevitably. And we also have to look at this long term, because this happens every so often. We always get to the debt ceiling. It's always a huge crisis, and the same thing happens every year. And I think it's worth looking at, so maybe we can avoid the political crisis of this and just continue to work for people.
One of the things that a lot of us looked at was just the way that the vote for speaker went. And I know that it was long, and 2 a.m. on Saturday you were finally able to,
yep.
to raise your right hand. But with the television coverage, it also peeled back the onion, and you're on record as saying that maybe that's not a bad thing, that cameras should be rolling all the time as opposed to just during certain segments.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even like the times that the cameras are rolling, but C-SPAN was actually able to zoom in on conversations and go throughout. And for, you know, for people who don't know, when there's rules in the House, it only allows for 2 or 3 camera shots, right, of the podiums. They can't do camera shots of the seats. And what we got is you usually have this period between the last Congress and the new Congress where there's technically no rules in the House. And C-SPAN is able to shift the camera. That's why we saw conversations between Matt Gaetz and AOC and like all these random conversations going on. And I think it's important because it shows people how democracy works. I think a lot of times we might think certain people don't talk to one another, but letting the American people see on camera, yeah, there are conversations going on with unlikely allies in different battles, I think can really, number one, restore a lot of faith in the United States Congress, and two, open up our democracy, make it more transparent. So the first bill that I co-sponsored is by Representative Mark Pocan, which is to free the cameras indefinitely, let C-SPAN show what they want to. That is the people's house, and it should, number one, be exciting for the people, but number two, it should be transparent.
And sometimes it gets a little heated. And we saw that as well.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to continue. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you again.
Of course.
Up next, before even moving to Washington, Maxwell Frost made headlines with his own housing struggles. We'll talk with him about his relatability when it comes to renting a home in the nation's capital, something many struggle with, of course, right here in Central Florida. Welcome back to Central Florida Spotlight. Talking today with newly sworn in U.S. Congressman Maxwell Frost, representing the 10th District. I say that, and I would imagine that as it's a new position for you, it still sounds pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's the honor of a lifetime. And, you know, the 10th District is very diverse, very beautiful. For folks who don't know, all the districts were changed last year. And so now the 10th Congressional District goes from it goes from West Orlando, Pine Hills area, all the way to Bithlo, Lake Pickett. We have Orange County side of Maitland, Winter Park, Sodo, and everything in between. And so it's a small district geographically on paper, but there's a lot of folks packed into these areas.
Well, you're not kidding. And one of the issues that most people really face, Maxwell, and you faced it there in Washington, as I said in my going to break comments, affordability of housing. First, let's talk about Washington. And you ran right into just trying to find a place to live because of your own situation as they tried to pull credit and those sorts of things. Yeah,
and you know, I believe in our electeds and our leaders being, number one, vulnerable, but also honest about the issues they're encountering. I think it helps make government feel more at home for people, but also shows that a lot of folks deal with these issues and they're real, even for an incoming congressman. You know, for me, I have to have a second place, a second apartment in D.C. because I'm there so often. And so for a young guy who really spent all my savings and had to go into debt during my campaign because, you know, you don't really get a paycheck for the whole year when you're campaigning, it was difficult for me. And really the point here is twofold. Number one, the entry point to positions of power determine who gets to those positions of power. So because you have to really have a lot of money in the first place to be able to run for office, we shouldn't be surprised that the net worth of Congress continues to go up, the net worth of working families continues to go down. And so it's because there's not true representation. So there's something to be said about changing the way our elections work and money in politics. But the second part here is just the fact that we have a housing affordability crisis in this country, and it's actually at its worst here in Central Florida per capita. It's number one, ensuring that people are even able to rent, able to become tenants, that they have a rent that's not breaking the bank, that's not taking most of their paycheck, which we're seeing that rise and rise and rise, and that people have a place to live. I believe in this country, the greatest country on the face of the earth, it should be a human right to have a roof over your head. I believe that in my heart, and it's what I'm going to fight for. And it's something that we need here in Central Florida.
How do you fix that?
Well, there's many different ways. Number one, you know, the best levers to pull here are at the local level, but there's still a lot Congress can do and the federal government can do. Two things. Number one, appropriate money to come down to Central Florida, to come to the municipality, to come to the county, to help ensure that we're building, yes, affordable housing, but also mixed income housing to ensure that there's affordable housing near opportunity and people are able to have a house where a home is, right? Where their home is, where Central Florida is. And we're seeing the average commute time for Central Floridians continue to rise and rise and rise because they're leaving Central Florida, leaving Orlando because the prices are too high.
But our values of our real estate are so high that why would a developer want to use his or her real estate for affordable housing when they can put a house up that is not affordable.
Yeah, well, I think the way of thinking about this is we got to get creative, and something that I'm really a proponent of is ensuring that we have very dense housing, especially here in Central Florida, allowing people to live here. You know, single-family homes are important, are great. I grew up in the suburbs, but on top of that, we just have an influx of folks coming into this district, a lot of young people coming into this district, people looking to start families. And what we know to be true is my generation is on track right now to own the least amount of assets of any other generation. We don't own homes, we don't own an apartment. A lot of us don't own a car that we're going to be able to, you know, sell in a few years. And so I'm thinking about it through that lens, right? And that shows me that there's a lot of opportunity in Central Florida to have, you know, dense housing units that might not look like the single family homes we're used to, that I think are going to give people more opportunity to live in Central Florida, live in the culture of this city, and grow it. And so there's a lot of ways that we can, you know, promote that, whether it's through tax incentives, or it's through ensuring that we have enforcement of laws that are on the book, or that we get rid of a lot of this exclusionary zoning. There's a lot that can happen there, but it can't be just the federal government. It can't just be the county. We all have to work together, and that's something that I'm excited to do.
Is that at the top of your list?
I would say it's one of our top 3 issues that we're focusing on in the first 90 days. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that after I was honest about my housing problems.
You tweeted about it.
Yeah, I tweeted about it. I received hundreds of letters and emails, many of them from people here in Central Florida, telling me their own tenant and renting stories. And so for me, it's looking at how do we help people with this issue that's happening right now. We want people to stay in their homes. We don't want people to be getting evicted, or people not even being able to own their own place. And there's work that we can do around that.
Okay, good. I love talking to you. We're going to continue on. The optimism of our Gen Z congressman is awesome. Up next, what is the focus for Maxwell Frost as a freshman member of the U.S. Congress beyond housing? We'll talk about that next. Welcome back to Central Florida Spotlight. Talking today in studio with Maxwell Frost, the first Gen Z member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Gen Z basically means he's a lot younger than I am. But Gen Z, being young and youthful, and I thought you said something earlier that really opened my eyes to this problem, that the problem with getting youthful people like you involved is that it's so hard, the entry point into politics. You almost have to be established financially to have a chance.
Exactly. I was actually just reading, there was an opinion piece in The Hill this morning from a state representative who is very young named Will Haskett, and he was talking about it, that when young people come up to him and say, what should I think about before I run? The top thing he'll bring up, and that I bring up, is personal finance, being able to fund your own life while you're campaigning. And when people ask for the solution, it's hard for me to give one, right? Yeah, I want to say save a lot of money, but a lot of times
You drove Uber.
Yeah, I drove Uber during my campaign to pay my bills, and even that wasn't enough because I knew I would have to spend most of my time campaigning to win this. You know, I mean, it's great first Gen Z and all this, but behind all that was a lot of work, right? 12, 14, 16-hour days for over about a year and a half of just work. And so when I Ubered, it was like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. about 5-6 nights a week to be able to afford my bills. And even at that, I had to, you know, use a credit card to pay for a lot of my living expenses. And so it's just important to be honest about this, because it's not just young people. It keeps poor people, it keeps working class people from running for office as well. And it's not just Congress either. It's a bunch of different offices. So we really need to get rid of these barriers to entry to our country's leadership, so that way the leadership of our country can better reflect the people.
All right, let's talk about how you want to reflect the people of Central Florida best. These are some of the things you promised. Of course, we touched on affordable housing, but your campaign platform also was ending gun violence, protecting U.S. democracy, and fighting the climate crisis.
Yeah, these things are extremely important to me, and I always like to be honest with people. My message to folks in Central Florida is this: when it comes to the United States Congress, the next 2 years will be extremely challenging to pass the agenda that I ran on. A lot of that has to do with the Republican majority that's in Congress, the fact that it's pretty dysfunctional. And we saw a lot of great bills passed over the past 2 years, right? From the bipartisan infrastructure package, the American Rescue Plan, et cetera. These are bills that actually brought a lot of money to Central Florida and that are actually helping people in their day-to-day life. I am pessimistic that we'll get bold, transformational legislation like that over the next 2 years. But what I will say is this: people in Central Florida can rest assured that they're going to have a fighter fighting in Washington, D.C. to ensure that the negative things that the Republican majority tries to pass won't happen. And we saw a lot of those bills come up, bills to help fuel this anti-freedom, anti-abortion, anti-bodily autonomy sentiment. We have more bills coming up that pretty much take away powers from prosecutors so they can't help instill justice in our system when it comes to being equitable. So there's just a lot of work that needs to be done. And the other thing is, no matter who's in the majority, the way I run my office here in Central Florida is up to me. And so that's something that's really important to me. Constituent services, helping people with what they need. And we're going to have an open house in a few weeks or in about a month where we invite folks to come to our office and see what we can do for them.
You talked about your rent situation in Washington being relatable, but also your backstory on gun violence and your passion there. Not the fact that we had Pulse happen down the road and we turn on the TV most every night and there's some sort of a shooting with maybe even young people involved, but you're also a survivor of gun violence. Talk about that and how that also helps to drive you each and every day. You
know, I've been in the gun violence work for a decade. Since I was 15, I got involved after Sandy Hook for one reason. I didn't want to get shot in school, and so I started organizing. I never considered myself a survivor of gun violence until I sat down at a conversation with other survivors. And as we went down the room and people explained their story, I heard stories that I would have never thought of before. And I realized that anyone who escapes gun violence is a survivor. And so there's so many people watching at home, you might not consider yourself a survivor, but you are. For me, it happened here downtown Orlando, 2016. I was downtown, I remember dressed as Chance the Rapper, hanging out with my friends. And a shooting broke out downtown, just two guys that were mad at each other. I remember hundreds of people running. All those people, myself included, survived that night, gun violence. And it's so normal in our country right now. We lose 100 people a day due to gun violence. The leading cause of death for children is gun violence too. And so there's just a lot of work that we needed to do on this issue, and it is very personal for me.
Absolutely. You saw and felt what that was like that night. Up next, dysfunction in D.C. Can it be fixed at all with some new ideas and new leaders? Maxwell Frost weighs in with his optimism. Welcome back to Central Florida Spotlight. Pick a day and there's a controversy in Washington, D.C. The latest, sensitive files stored by President Joe Biden while he was vice president. The Republicans compare this to what former President Trump is accused of and want a thorough investigation. Democrat newcomer to Washington, Maxwell Frost, is with us. You're kind of on the outside like all of us at this point, with not really a say in what's happening with that investigation. But from your closer vantage point as a new member of Congress, what do you think of all of this with the files on both sides and this becoming a political football?
Yeah, well, number one, the first thing I'll say is it's unacceptable to have any private documents like that, confidential documents, in a place outside of a government building like that, no matter who it is, Democrat or Republican. But let's not pretend like this is the same thing that happened with former President Donald Trump. You know, as soon as President Biden found out about this, it was reported. He is cooperating with the National Archives on this, ensuring that this is remedied. And he's doing it immediately. He's not hiding about it. He's not trying to downplay it. And I think that's important to note. President Trump did the exact opposite. He is still not fully cooperating with it. And there were tons of documents found. And so there's really a false equivalency that's being built here. And you see a lot of these Republican leaders that want a thorough investigation on this. They're the same people who kept quiet when it happened with President Trump. In fact, the chair of the Oversight Committee just a couple days ago came on TV and said that he wants to look into the President Biden's situation. But a few years ago, when he was asked on TV about President Trump's, he said it's not a concern for him. It's not a top priority of his committee. And so we see, again, people using politics, and we see the hypocrisy in broad daylight. And I think it's important to be honest about it.
And I think you were honest right there. You said that there's no excuse for having those
documents. There's no excuse for anyone. There's no excuse for anyone to do that. And I think President Biden realizes that, and that's why he's been very forthright about it. You know, as soon as they found out, it was reported. He's following the protocol, and I think it's important to square those two things. It's not the same situation.
You said your focus is going to be on Central Floridians. You know you can control that, but you're going to have some so-called dance partners in Washington to get anything done. And you've talked about a movement. You said you will join the Congressional Progressive Caucus. You haven't committed yet to joining any other groups, including the so-called Squad, a group of young progressive lawmakers in the House that feature AOC. What are your plans?
Yeah, so far I'm in 3 different caucuses. The Congressional Progressive Caucus, in which I was elected a vice chair at large. I'm part of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, which I am part of the leadership on that as well. And I'm also part of the Congressional Black Caucus, which is considered the conscience of the caucus. And excited to be there in a leadership position as well. So these are 3 of the most powerful Democratic caucuses in Congress, and I'm excited to be there. I've been learning so much, really connecting with senior members. I feel like, you know, I have so many people in my corner in DC who want to see me succeed, which means they really want to see Central Florida succeed, and that really means the world to me. But you said it at first, right? I'm one of 435 people. And the way the system works is it works in a way so that way, if one person wants to do something, they cannot do it alone. They need to have the majority of folks in Congress on their side. And so we do have to work in a bipartisan way. And I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to do that on some good things.
I want to end with this, your message of love, and these are your words. When you love somebody, you want them to have health care, housing. You want them to be safe, free of gun violence.
Exactly. I think every single person in this country, no matter who you are, deserves those key tenets of life: safety, freedom, economic opportunity. And what I'm saying is I believe that when you love a community and you love the people in it, you're willing to fight for those things. Now, listen, I know we're not going to get everything we want tomorrow. We're not going to get everything we want in the next 2 years. But in order to take the first step in a journey, you have to know where you want to go. And I'm going to continue to be unafraid to talk about a world where everybody has health care as a human right, where everybody has a roof over their head as a human right. Not because I foolishly think it'll happen tomorrow, but because I believe that one day in this country it can. And I think our leaders should continue to see the world through the eyes of our most vulnerable communities and legislate in a way that works to bring up everybody. And that's really what my message of love is all about. I love this city. And more importantly, I love the people in it in Central Florida. And because I love the people in it, I want everyone to be afforded the opportunity, but resources that they need to tap into that opportunity as well.
Yeah, if we look through that prism, might make things a little easier for all of us.
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
Of course, thanks for having me on.
You bet, we'll do it again. And that will do it for this week's edition of Central Florida Spotlight. Again, thank you to newly elected Central Florida U.S. Congressman Maxwell Frost for coming into the studio, and thank you for watching. Have a great remainder of your weekend, and take care.